151 teams tried it. Nobody was able to get it done. The Celtics really, Jarvis, had the best chance because there were four teams in the NBA's history that were down 0-3, got it to game seven. Celtics are the only ones who were able to get it done at home or try to get it done at home, but could not, as the Heat found a way to beat them yet again, 103-84, the final season low for the Celtics in a decisive closeout stay or win or stay home game.
Yeah.
You spent almost 365 days, almost the second after the NBA Finals closed out in 2022, talking about how you wanted to get back to this point, but you couldn't. And I feel like it was one of those, you see the memes sometimes online where it just uses the greater than sign or the less than. And all I could see was Eric Spoelstra is greater than Joe Mazzulla, because a lot of it was, yes, the Heat players, both their superstar and their role player stepping up to the plate. But also it was about a coach that after game 6 told you, I don't know how we're going to win, but we are going to win this game. And they actually, Miami showed up and did exactly what they said they were going to do. But we know that the more serious thing for our Hawks fans were, so how Jaylen Brown doing with the commentary around whether or not he'll be returning to that team next season, or does the Hawks franchise really have a crack at getting him, as the Celtics franchise tries to determine what they need to do to get over the hump. But before we go there, Jarvis, one of the things I wanted to ask about specifically Celtics Heat is, when I looked at that game, the Celtics overall reminded me of one thing. Are the Celtics kind of like your throwback Bills, a team that went to 4 straight Super Bowls and could never get it done? That's what the Celtics feel like to me. They feel like the team that's always going to get there. They're always going to be in the mix, whether that's Eastern Conference Finals or NBA Finals. But I don't know if this team ever has what it takes with the mental fortitude, the basketball IQ, or the intestinal fortitude to get it done.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. The way they're currently constructed, I don't think they're going to be able to get it done, because here's why. At the end of the day, they just basically throughout the whole point guard position. Like, we don't need one. All we need is a whole bunch of athletic wings and guys who can shoot the 3 ball and play defense, and we can get it done. And that's proved to not be true, because at the end of the day, like, this team shoots the 3 regardless of what, of how they're doing it. I know it's a lot of times, they tell guys the mantra nowadays is to keep shooting, keep shooting, keep shooting, keep shooting. But for me, I don't like that mantra, because in the playoffs, you basically depending on whether or not you got it or not. And then they didn't have it last night to start the game off. So it is just that's why I feel like the whole Eric Spoelstra piece comes into play, right? Because he has the coaching acumen. He has the respect of his players. And Joe Mazzulla is the opposite of that. I don't think he has the coaching acumen. Now, I'm not saying he will never be a solid coach.
Right.
But I am saying that he has some growing to do from that standpoint. And then it's from a respective player's point. Like, you can see Jason Tatum, not necessarily in this game, but the previous games and games throughout this entire playoffs, they ain't really listening to him like that. They don't. I feel like he doesn't have the command and respect that those guys need from their coach, or they need to give to their coach in order for them to get the job done. So I think overall, the way it's constructed, I don't think they're going to get it done. And I think that they are kind of like a throwback team of how teams used to get championships done. Hey, load up with all the talent and y'all can figure it out. I don't think that's necessarily the case. Last night proved to me that you can have a couple of guys that are considered superstars or stars in the NBA, and Bam Adebayo and Jimmy Butler, but you can have some guys that are developmental pieces that have you brought in, you coach those guys up, so to speak, and you can get the job done that way. Now, if Spoelstra and this team are going to be able to get it done in the NBA Finals, that's a whole nother conversation. Yeah. However, I think Hawks fans should have some resolve, should have a little piece to say, hey, might not necessarily need the whole 3 superstar thing to get it done.
Yeah, and that's a team that you beat. The Hawks beat the Heat, and the Heat had to find their way back in.
Like, they drove them. Like, there wasn't no, they beat the ball. They beat the crap out of them.
Yeah, they really did. I mean, they really did. And you think about the Hawks and what they were able to do I think the Hawks low-key probably were the Celtics' worst enemy in more ways than one. Yeah, you got 2 games out of them, but what you really did was you woke up the sleeping giant in the Heat. I think
Yes.
that when the Hawks beat them, they said, wait a minute, we should not be resting on our laurels. And it's like every single person stepped up. And that made me think about something else that you mentioned. One of the things that made Eric Spoelstra so confident is because he knew, yeah, Duncan Robinson, you have done a disappearing act, but I'm going to expect you to show up game 7, no questions asked. And he
Right.
did. Got him 10
Mhm.
points. Caleb
Mhm.
Martin, keep being the Caleb Martin that you are. If Joe Mazzulla is not going to game plan for you, keep doing you. Okay. And
Yeah.
so that's what I loved as well. And that
Almost
kind of made
conference
me think
finals
about Jaylen Brown.
MVP Caleb Martin. T. He
Say it
was
again for me.
almost he was almost the finals in the conference finals
Exactly.
MVP.
That's
He
why I
had enough,
said,
almost had
say it
enough
again
votes.
for me.
Yeah.
Not the superstar. There would have been a good argument
Yeah.
for the role player, the undrafted free agent role player who was able to help the Heat get over the hump.
Right.
But you look at a guy like Jaylen Brown, right? And not to
Mhm.
say that he didn't take something away from Joe Mazzulla and even from Ime Udoka, but on the same token, I wonder about a Jaylen Brown being under somebody like, say, a Quinn Snyder, and whether or not you could
Mhm.
get something different out of him. So here's the thing. Stat line wise, his numbers look virtually the same with DeJounte Murray's, by the way. They're
Right.
both shooting around 34% from 3. DeJounte's, well, Jalen's a little better from the field, 49% versus 43. And then when you look down 45, you look down the rest of the stat line, it's virtually the same. But Jarvis, what if? And it would be an interesting lineup because you might have to decide if you want a DeJounte Jalen backcourt. Just saying. Because I
Mhm.
mean, DeJounte and Jalen are essentially the same, they play the same position.
Right.
How would you figure that in? And do you think that that's a road that is viable? We're not talking contracts, guys, by the way. We're not, because you know that's very complicated and convoluted when it comes to the NBA. Just theoretically, could a coach like a Quinn Snyder get Jaylen Brown to put his talent with his mental fortitude, his intestinal fortitude, and get him to be, I don't know if he necessarily has to be that guy, but maybe a true Robin, like I'm going to come in the paint and be Robin 95% of the time. And then at the times when I need to be Batman, I'm going to be that because Quinn Snyder can get me there.
You to be honest with you, now Brian Windhorst is reported that both sides are going to come to a contract deal, but I know that's not what we're talking about. But if this were a situation where the Hawks had the opportunity to get him, I really feel like you're going to have to choose between Trae Young or DeJounte Murray. I feel like that's the only way the deals are going to get done. But for the reasons I just mentioned of them saying, hey, we don't need a point guard. They need a guy that can set up an offense. Now, I know Jason Tatum's going to get the rock when it's crunch time. Get it. Understand that. However, throughout the game, to get your guys into a flow of a game, a flow of an offense, like you need a good point guard. And I think that, Trae Young ain't going nowhere. So I'm essentially talking about DeJounte Murray.
Yeah.
Are you going to be willing to part ways with DeJounte Murray with 1 year left on his deal? And of course, he's going to take a couple other pieces as well, and of course, maybe some draft picks to get this thing done. But I really feel like, that's the only piece that I feel like that Boston would be at least halfway interested, is that you throw a guy like DeJounte Murray into that fold. And to be honest with you, I really wholeheartedly want to see this Trae Young, DeJounte Murray thing work.
Yeah.
I want to see what Quinn Snyder can do with a full off season, a full season of coaching and that interaction and trying to build this team up. I want to see what that would look like. But I really only think that this deal gets done if they throw in DeJounte Murray to make it work.
Yeah, you'd have to, because you really have to give them close to same for same, if not more. And you may have to have, like you said, have a DeJounte Murray, and you may have to, unfortunately, you might not want to, but you may have to consider throwing in, I hate saying it out loud even, but an AJ Griffin type. I'm just going to have to say it that way because I can't say AJ Griffin himself, because the minute I saw that his dad got hired by the Bucks, I was like, I watched Twitter go crazy in Atlanta. Like, no, you will not take your junior. No, you will not.
No.
Nobody wants him gone because, like you said, I'd love to see, I know Quinn Snyder didn't give him a whole lot of play when he came on board, but I'd love to see AJ Griffin year 2 and what that looks like. But I agree with you as well. As much as I would love to see Jaylen Brown, when you dig down into the numbers, and you dig down into what it would take to get him here, which would be the parting of DeJounte Murray, are you really saying that you're okay with the Hawks parting ways to get the same guy? Because stat-wise, they're pretty much the same guy, but I might give DeJounte the edge in facilitating. So
Yeah.
are you
Oh, for
okay
sure.
with
Yeah.
giving him away to get Jaylen? Look at the stat line before you make that decision, because I don't think there's as much disparity as people would like to think there is. And to your point, what might DeJounte look like when you look at DJ in a full year with Quinn Snyder, once Quinn figures out how to get these two people in place? One more thing before we wrap up, Jarvis, I think too, that if best case scenario, and of course we are pontificating big time,
Right.
you keep DeJounte and maybe it doesn't work out. Maybe Jaylen Brown stays with the Celtics one more year and says, okay, we've done our Buffalo Bills thing one time too many. I'm out of here. Maybe you revisit it next year. You just never know what might happen. It's the NBA at the end of the day where, yeah, Brian Windhorst can be absolutely right about a contract being agreed to by the C's and Jaylen Brown. And then we're having this conversation next year about Jaylen Brown saying, I told you all last season I wanted out. I still do. So who we don't hope wants out is our everydayers. Never, ever, ever.
Yes,
Please,
we
please
want you
stick
guys to stay
around,
right
stick and
here.
stay with us, because we love it when you guys come around. We know you want to talk to us about your Memorial Day weekend as well. What you guys do? Did you pack a plate? Did you pack 5 plates when those people told you could take food? You should have done it. That's what the everydayers are getting away from ATL day ones, and some conversation, real talk about who you think will be the potential to bring to the Hawks on a team that could potentially be back in the conference finals, hopefully next year. Also, you come here to hear us talk to you about what we think about the Falcons as they go through their final week of voluntary OTAs and get prepared for mini camp. So don't forget, wherever you check us out on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast, make sure you leave comments on YouTube and make sure you download us wherever you get your podcast.